Hi everyone, today I'd like to show you how to make the front of a patchwork cushion. Now you might be asking, why just the front? Well, that's because I'd like to give you, in other videos, a choice of back such as zips, ties, velcro, buttons, whatever you want to do. So in this video I'm just going to show you the front, and the method I'm going to show you can be applied to quilts, throws and anything that involves joining blocks together. So let's get started. Now to start with, I've cut out 16 4.5 inch squares in 4 different fabrics. Now you can use whichever fabrics you want. You know, you could do it in 2 colours, say black and white, and just alternate them, or you could have a different colour for every square, whichever you want to do. I like to try and keep it as random as possible, but it can be quite difficult. I try and avoid these diagonals as much as I can, but sometimes it's inevitable. But don't worry about it. Patchwork cushions are fun, so you can do anything you want. So now they're laid out in this arrangement, we're ready to stitch. I'm going to join each row, the squares in each row together first, and then I'll join the rows together afterwards. Okay, so first of all I'm going to take the first 2. I've got my machine threaded with a neutral thread because there's a few different colours in here. So if it's neutral, you're not going to notice it. Okay, so about 1/4 inch seam. What I like to do is line it up with the edge of my presser foot, and as long as every seam is the same, it doesn't matter if they're not quite 1/4 inch. Okay, so let's stitch those 2 together. And once I've done that, I'm not going to cut the thread, but I'm going to pick the next 2 up and stitch them together. So just go a couple of stitches past the end of the first 2 squares, and then carry on stitching on the next 2 squares. Cut them apart and lay them back out. Okay, once you're sure that that's in the right colour order, you're going to join the 2 sets of 2 together. And there you are. There's your first row complete. So what you need to do is join all the other squares together, just the same as the first row, and I'll show you how to join the rows together. So now I've got all my rows sewn together. Sorry, all my blocks in each row sewn together is what I mean. And before we sew the rows together, we're going to press them in a particular way that makes it a lot easier to line up each of these seams. Okay, so first of all, I'll need my trusty tabletop ironing board. And I'm going to take row 1 first of all, and for row 1 I'm going to iron all the seams to the left. All the seam allowances on the back I'm going to iron to the left. Okay, so I put it on the ironing board, and what I'm going to do is just hold this end, and as I start ironing, a little bit of steam, not too much, as I start ironing I'm just going to stretch it slightly, and when I do that it saves me getting all those little ledges you can sometimes get underneath. A bit more steam there. Okay, and once you've ironed that, just leave it to cool slightly. Because when you've ironed something, if you pick it up off the ironing board too quickly, you'll find you put more creases in than you just took out. And once I've done these 2 rows, you'll see that row 1 is going in one direction to the left and row 2 is going to the right. So row 3 needs to be the same as row 1, so that's all seam allowances to the left, and row 4 all seam allowances to the right. So once you've done that, it's ready to sew. We're ready to sew the rows together. So now I've got all my blocks joined into rows and I'm ready to join the rows together. So I'm going to take a row 1 and 2 to start with. And we're going to fold row 1 over onto row 2. And now we're going to nest the seams together. That is, as you lay the seams together, you'll find they slot together because of ironed the allowances in opposite directions. Creates a little ledge and allows them to slot together. So once you've got them slotted together, and you can fold them back to make sure they're straight, you're going to put a pin in. Without getting them stuck in the board, that is. Pin them all the way along, folding them back each time to make sure they're lined up. That's perfectly lined up. Excuse me, I've got a bit of a frog in my throat this morning. Time for a drink after this, I think. And there you go. I'm ready to stitch those first 2 rows together. Now, while you're stitching your first 2 rows together, it's really important to make sure that the seam allowances stay flat in the direction that you ironed them. So 1/4 inch seam again. Got my sewing machine threaded up with a neutral thread again. So I'm going to line it up with the edge of this pressure foot. Might not be exactly 1/4 inch, but as I said before, as long as all your seams are the same, it'll be fine. So let's sew if I can find the presser foot. You can see I'm sewing over pins here. Now when you sew over pins, it's important to slow down before you approach the pin. If you approach it at speed, it's likely that the pin or your needle will either break or bend, and that'll slow you up a bit. So always slow down. So I've now joined all my rows together, giving it a good press back and front, and the joining rows I've pressed open, making sure that the rows that join the blocks together stay in the position they were originally. That is, row 1 to the left, row 1 to the right, and so on. Okay, so when I make a patchwork cushion, I like to put a layer of cotton batting underneath the front panel, because I find that when it's quilted, it gives the patchwork some definition, gives it some sort of relief. It looks a lot better. Okay, so if I was going to quilt this and I was using a walking foot, I would just put a few pins in to stop it moving about, and then I would quilt 3 lines downwards. I would normally quilt in the ditch, but if you're nervous about that, you can quilt about 1 centimetre away from the seam line. Okay, and I would also quilt across the way in 3 lines as well. Okay, and that's your patchwork cushion top. Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed what you saw, why not subscribe and take a look at some of my other sewing videos. All the videos in the Designer Cushion series are based on my book, How to Design and Make Fabulous Cushions. And if you'd rather read than watch, the book is available on Amazon. Thanks once again. Bye.